They can easily destroy worlds and have the power to turn back time. These are the most powerful gods in solo leveling. To understand their powers, let me first explain who was the absolute being. In another world, there was only light and darkness. Then came this dude, all covered in silver and gold, pointy and super shiny. He was known as the absolute being, and he was so overpowered that he split the light to create the messengers of God and darkness to create the monarchs. The monarchs were born to destroy the world, and the messengers were born to protect it. So basically the monarchs are like troubled children, and the messengers are like the well-behaved kids. It's not really like that. The messengers and monarchs fought each other for a very long time, but nobody could truly stand victorious. So the messengers grew tired of this endless war and asked their creator, the absolute being, to help them defeat the monarchs once and for all. But you know, this absolute being just curved him hard. So basically he didn't say anything. That's when the messengers realized that their creator liked watching them fight and didn't want the war to stop. Of course, there's nothing more entertaining than watching children fight. You know what happens when kids don't get what they want, right? They start to rebel. The messengers figured that as long as the absolute being was around, the war would never stop. In short, these kids made a plan to kill their dad. But there was one who didn't agree with this plan. One monarch named Ashbourne. He was the only messenger who stayed loyal and tried to stop the others from killing their dad. But since there were so many against him, Ashbourne got overwhelmed and nearly died. Right at the brink of his death, he found out that the absolute being had sneakily hidden a special power inside him. With this newfound power, he raised an army of undead soldiers and charged into battle. But by the time he got back to the absolute being, it was already too late. The other messengers had already stormed the throne room and attacked their creator. There Ashbourne found the absolute being sitting lifeless on his throne, his body pierced by countless spears, covered in blood, betrayed and murdered by his own creations. So the lesson here is, guys, don't have children. But how did the rulers kill the absolute being? I mean, he's the OG god. Why would he die at the hands of his own creation? So Ashbourne explained in chapter 163, there is no such thing as infinite power. Just like how the absolute being was defeated by his creations, all power has an end. It's no different from how humans are killed or hurt by machines of their own making. You know, for example, our phones are great tools and weapons to mess up our own head. The rulers and monarchs were created to fight, and they became so strong that they could even kill their own father. Just think of it like the movies about how AI could destroy humanity. So after they successfully murdered their own creator, the messengers who rebelled took over as gods and became known as the rulers. The rulers used special tools that had the power of the absolute being. With these devices, they started to attack the monarchs and even caught one of them, Legia. Legia is the king of the giants and the monarch of the beginning. The main issue with this character is that we haven't actually seen his full power. That's why I put him at the very end of our list, because it's kind of hard to tell if he's actually the strongest or the weakest monarch. Here are two reasons why it's so confusing. Number one, he was easily captured by the rulers, which might suggest he's not that strong. Number two, the rulers went after him on purpose because he has a special kind of power that can turn the tides of a battle. This idea makes sense, especially since Ashbourne mentioned that the capture of Legia led to a collapse in the balance of power. I also think he's quite clever, especially in how he tried to persuade Jin-woo. Let me explain. In chapter 137, when Jin-woo confronted this giant, Legia was so excited because he thought he would finally be free. He promised that if Jin-woo released him, he would help him in the big war that was about to come. See? He's trying to manipulate. I think this guy would do great on Hinge. But of course, Jin-woo doesn't trust him. How can you trust a monster that is just enchained in the first place? So, to gain Jin-woo's trust, Legia cast a magic spell called the Pledge of Trust. This spell made sure that neither of them could tell lies to each other. Sneaky trick, right? But of course it was actually a scam. Then Jin-woo thought that if Legia was gonna be his ally anyway, why not just turn this giant into one of his shadow soldiers? The guy is cold. At first, Legia was terrified because he thought he saw Ashbourne for a second. Then he explained that Jin-woo couldn't actually turn him into a shadow soldier. This is because monarchs and rulers have astral bodies that get destroyed when they die. So Jin-woo can't turn the king of the giants into his shadow. Legia still tried to convince Jin-woo to free him and become allies. But Jin-woo was way smarter than that. Jin-woo found something called an essence stone stuck in the back of Legia's neck. That was the bad news because as long as that stone was in the giant's neck, it would make him kill humans. When Leisha realized he had been caught, he tried to attack Jin-woo, but Jin-woo was way too fast and dodged all his moves. Then with just one powerful hit, Jin-woo ended Leisha's life. So in theory, Leisha was a major threat not just because of his strength, but also because he was really cunning. However, he wasn't so lucky with Jin-woo, who was just a little too sharp for him. Now here's what I'm thinking. Why was Leisha called the monarch of the beginning? What's up with the beginning? Was he like the very first monarch ever, or is there something else behind it? Or what if he had some ability to mess with time? Sort of like a mini version of the Cup of Reincarnation. This cup is a powerful item that the rulers actually used to turn back time. I'm gonna explain that more later. Next up is Tarnak, the monarch of steel and king of monsters. Just like Leisha, we didn't get to see much of Tarnak's power, but judging by his title, the Monarch of Steel or the Monarch of the Iron Body, he's probably like the tank among the monarchs. He can also transform into a monster. However, I think his transformation doesn't really enhance his combat power because this guy first showed up with the other 3 monarchs when they murdered Christopher Reed. So Tarnak teaming up with the other monarchs suggests that he's more of a tank or support rather than the main damage dealer. Then in chapter 152, when the Frost Monarch wanted the other monarchs to help him kill Jin-woo before he got too powerful, Tarnak was the first one to say, "Oh hell no!" He thought trying to fight Jin-woo on their own was a really bad idea because Jin-woo can whoop their asses. Tarnak believed it was smarter to wait for Antares, the monarch of destruction, to come back and help them. So, if Tarnak is so strong, why wait for Antares? I'm not saying Tarnak isn't powerful, but compared to the other monarch's destructive abilities, he might not be on the same level. You know what I mean? This could be why he prefers having a teammate to handle the attacks while he focuses on defense. Fast forward, when Antares showed up in the human world, Tarnak joined him and ended up facing Thomas Andre on the battlefield. Tarnak decided to take Thomas on in a fight. But Tarnak was too cocky, and he even mentioned that he can kill Andre in a blink of an eye. Yet, he didn't realize that Thomas was prepared. The Monarch of Steel was surprised when Belion and Beru suddenly jumped out of Thomas's shadow. Tarnak then realized, it's a trap. It's a trap! Tarnak tried to call Antares, using his mind-reading powers to warn him, but couldn't because Tusk had blocked his telepathy, cutting off his communication with Antares. Tarnak was so pissed because he was outplayed by Jin-woo. So the Monarch of Steel transformed himself into a monster and tried to beat Thomas, Belion, and Beru all on his own. But it didn't work out for him. Even just the 2 shadows were too strong for Tarnak, and they beat him up. And that proves that the Monarch of Steel was not as strong as he really thought he was. Sure, he's tough, but Beru and Belion are on a whole another level. Tarnak just couldn't keep up because he's not the best when it comes to dealing damage. Even though we didn't get to see all of Leisha's true power, I still think Tarnak is stronger. But if it turns out that the giant king Leisha can actually mess with time, well, that's a whole different storyline. Now, going back to chapter 152, there's a second person aside from Tarnak that refused when the Frost Monarch asked the other monarchs to help him kill Jin-woo. And that's Yogamont, the monarch of transfiguration and the king of demonic specters. The reason why he refused to help the Frost Monarch is because Yogamont doesn't want to end up like the monarch of White Flames, which is Baran, the demon king. And I'll explain this story in more detail later. So, if Tarnak was kinda like a tank, then Yogamont was more like a mage. The only thing we know about his powers is that he can open portals. That's probably why he's called the Monarch of Transfiguration, because he can change or manipulate space. And actually, we saw this in action in chapter 173. In chapter 173, Yogamont tried to help Antares beat Jin-woo by opening lots of portals to bring in more dragon soldiers, but their plan didn't work. This was because Jin-woo's skill, Dragon's Fearsome Roar, rendered the dragon army useless. It immobilized every single dragon, including Yogamont. After that, no one knew where Yogamont went. I think maybe he died from emotional damage. I also think he's kinda like Tarnak. Yogamont just supports other monarchs because he can't really deal damage by himself, unless he summons a powerful monster or demonic specter to fight for him. So, if you figure out a way to stop Yogamont from summoning portals, or if you immobilize him just like Jin-woo did, then he's pretty much out of the fight. Later, when Jin-woo finally defeated Antares, he asked the rulers to use the Cup of Reincarnation one last time to turn back time. After that, Jin-woo started to chase the monarchs in a place called the Dimensional Rift or Chaos World, where Jin-woo finally found Yogamont and definitely smashed. There were actually 2 monarchs who teamed up with the Frost Monarch to try and take down Jin-woo. The first was Raken, and the second was Kyoresha, the Queen of Insects and the Monarch of Plagues. And guess what? Jin-woo ended up fighting all 3 of them at the same time. So when you compare her up against the other 3 monarchs we talked about, Kyoresha is way stronger because she actually went toe-to-toe with Jin-woo. At least she had courage. And that's the type of queen I need in my life. A courageous one, because I'm scared of life. The Insect Queen launched her attack on Jin-woo with an army of corpses, which she controlled using parasites. But during the fight she got way too focused on trying to mess with Beru's mind. Big mistake. While she was distracted, Jin-woo saw the opportunity. And my boy? He took it. He snuck up behind her and slashed her face. Man, Kyoresha was absolutely furious. So she regenerated her entire body and tried to hit Jin-woo with her poison, but here's the thing, our boy Jin-woo is totally immune to poison. This just made Kyoresha even more enraged. Sounds like my ex-girlfriend, you know what I'm saying? She charged at Jin-woo, but he easily stopped her with the ruler's authority. Then with a swift move, he used his mutilation skill to slice her entire body into pieces. Now here's what I think about why Kyoresha is stronger than previous monarchs I mentioned earlier. If she will fight against Tarnak, it might be a tough fight because Tarnak is a tank, but if she continuously overwhelms this guy with her zombie army, then she could probably win. Or she can rain Tarnak down with her poison to wear down this armor. Fighting against Yogamont is a difficult scenario because the Monarch of Transfiguration can easily summon monsters that can wipe out Kyoresha's zombie army. Yet, if the Insect Queen can restrain Yogamont, then there's nothing that he can do. If she fights against Leisha, it could be a tough battle because the Giant King, with his wits and strength, can totally flip the battle's outcome. Of course, he has giant armies, but I think the zombie apocalypse army might just overwhelm them because, you know, they don't die, sort of. Plus, if these giants die, she could also take control of them with her parasites. However, like I mentioned before, if Leisha can manipulate time, Kyoresha might struggle to combat the monarch of the beginning. But since we haven't seen the full might of these 3, based on what we've seen in the manhwa, Kyoresha seems definitely stronger than the others. Next up is the Frost Monarch. But unlike the other monarchs, this guy doesn't even have a name. The Frost Monarch went to Korea and hunted down Chairman Go Gung-hee, one of the ruler's vessels, and managed to kill him. Side note, the rulers don't appear much in the story, but their human vessels did, like Jin-woo since Ashbourne was a former ruler, Thomas Andre, Christopher Reed, and Jin-woo's dad, Sang Yil-hwan. The Monarch of Frost is super tricky to fight because he's smart and uses everything to his advantage. I like guys like this, you know, working at full potential, not letting anything go to waste. Like this one time he was fighting Chairman Gun-hee, and just as Jin-woo showed up, the Frost Monarch quickly made a huge ice wall and threw an ice spear at Gun-hee just to distract Jin-woo. Heartless. That quick thinking gave him just enough time to escape. He's a cold mofo. Literally. After seeing Jin-woo's power, the Frost Monarch realized that they could actually lose a war if Jin-woo was to go against them. That's why he met up with the other monarchs and asked for their help to quickly defeat Jin-woo before he realized his full power. Tarnak and Yogamont were too scared and disagreed, but Raken and Kyoresha thought they could win since they believed Jin-woo wasn't at his strongest just yet. During the fight with Jin-woo, the Frost Monarch showed off his powerful abilities. As soon as Jin-woo summoned his shadows, the Frost Monarch instantly froze them with his icy breath. Now this guy needs trident. He could even create weapons out of ice and summon ice golems. So the Frost Monarch already showed 2 advantages against the other monarchs. One is that he can freeze an entire army, so even if you have giants or zombies, he can instantly stop them. Plus, aside from his army of ice elves, he can even create his own monsters, which are the ice golems. Meaning that the Frost Monarch can't be outnumbered. Plus, he can also create his own weapons. And he has an immense speed and strength that actually went toe-to-toe with Jin-woo in their second battle. When Jin-woo killed Kyoresha, the Frost Monarch kept Jin-woo busy and Raken sneakily attacked Jin-woo from behind, seriously hurting him. For a moment, it seemed like they had defeated Jin-woo, but that's what they thought, because Jin-woo has 2 hearts. And when his black heart started beating again, he came back to life. The monarchs tried to finish him off, but then Il-hwan showed up. With a super strong kick, he sent them flying to a nearby building. Seeing that they were losing, Raken decided to bail, leaving the Frost Monarch to fight Jin-woo by himself. Even though he was by himself, the Frost Monarch didn't give up. He created a giant ice storm that chopped off Ilhwan's left arm. But just as he was about to beat Ilhwan, Jin-woo returned, back from the dead. The Frost Monarch, stubborn as ever, tried to fight Jin-woo, throwing his trident and casting ice magic. But nothing worked against Jin-woo. He broke the trident with just one hand and slashed the Frost Monarch across the chest. And that's how he finally avenged Chairman Gang-hee. The Monarch of Frost can absolutely handle the Monarchs, Tarnak, Yogamont, and Koratia. Either he can overpower them with his powers, armies, and of course with his strength or speed. But apart from that, I think he's just smarter than the others. Although, if he'll be fighting against the monarch Rakan, then I don't think he can win. Now let's talk about the King of Beasts, the Monarch of Fangs, Rakan. When he showed up, rampaging through the city, Thomas Andre tried to stop him. Andre put up a great fight, but Rakan in his full power was too much for Thomas. So, imagine if the Frost Monarch fights against Rakan. Yes, the Frost Monarch is fast, and his ice magic is tricky, but remember, during Rakan's fight with Andre, Rakan wasn't using his full power. So if Rakan transforms into his true form, he could easily overpower the Frost Monarch for sure. Also, Thomas and Tarnak seem similar in their abilities, but of course Tarnak, the Monarch of Steel, is stronger. However, if Tarnak and Rakan were to battle, Rakan's strength could easily break through Tarnak's tough armor. Even if Rakan were to fight against an army, he could handle it pretty well because he also has his own army. Plus his true form is massive. He's so powerful he could defeat an entire army by himself. And with his size, he could tackle giants as well. Just as Rakan was about to kill Andre, Leonard Nierman, an S-rank hunter from Germany, stepped in. But even Nierman stood no chance against Rakan, and nearly met his end. He was on the brink of defeat until one of Jin-woo's shadows intervened, stopping Rakan in his tracks. Moments later, Jin-woo appeared and delivered a crushing axe kick, smashing Rakan into the ground. A few chapters later, when Jin-woo came back to life, Rakan totally freaked out. Then Ilhwan showed up and kicked off a fierce fight with Rakan and the Frost Monarch. The moment the King of Beasts realized he couldn't stop Jin-woo, Rakan didn't waste a second. He dished the Frost Monarch and escaped through a portal. Damn, Rakan the chicken. He actually pulled that same stunt when he and the Demon King Baran betrayed Ashbourne. Yeah, that's the only problem with Rakan. If he knows his enemy's stronger, the guy's gonna run away. So Rakan tried to hide himself, but he soon realized Jin-woo had followed him. Knowing he couldn't beat Jin-woo or escape, Rakan bowed his head and begged for forgiveness. Jin-woo agreed, but only if Rakan could withstand 5 of his attacks first. Realizing Jin-woo was mocking him, Rakan transformed into his ultimate form, ready to fight back with all his might. But Jin-woo defeated him easily. Now let's talk about the King of Demons and the Monarch of White Flames, Baran. But first let me show you what happened so you'll understand the Demon King's power. In chapter 128, when the architect revealed the past to Jin-woo, he saw that right after Ashbourne destroyed the ruler's soldiers, Baran and Rakan, leading their own armies, tried to attack the Shadow Monarch. But despite Baran's efforts, Ashbourne defeated both him and the Monarch of Fangs. Rakan actually ran away from the fight, leaving the Demon King behind. Rakan is a big wussy, mate. Then Ashbourne approached Baran and asked why he had turned against the Shadow Monarch. We didn't get a proper answer because, well, we all can't really speak demon. This made Ashbourne so pissed that he ended up crushing Baran's skull with one hand. The Demon King that Jin-woo fought in the Demon Castle is actually a copy of Baran, made by the architect, to be the final boss. Yet even as a copy, this guy was strong. I mean, he can summon many demons through portals, has lightning breath, and those hit by it instantly get stunned. That's why Jin-woo had a rough time with Bara too. But thanks to a distraction caused by Esil, Jin-woo managed to win. He ripped off Baran's left arm and smacked him hard in the jaw, which literally destroyed Baran's body. So, if the copy of the Demon King was this powerful, just imagine how overpowered the original Baran must have been. We didn't get a chance to see the full extent of this monarch's power, but his formidable strength might just be exactly why Antares ordered him and Rakan to betray Ashbourne. Why? Probably because Rakan and Baran were on the same level of strength, making them the only monarchs who had a real shot at taking on the Shadow Monarch. Yet, there's still a chance that Baran was actually stronger than Rakan, because the moment Rakan saw Baran was defeated, he left him. So, if someone gets defeated, you wouldn't give up unless you think they were stronger than you and they got defeated. Next, Antares, the King of Dragons and the Monarch of Destruction. Antares finally came to the human world through a huge gate in Canada, my country. There he met Jay Mills, an S-rank hunter. When Antares saw that Jin-woo wasn't there, he used his fiery breath to turn Jay into ashes. Feeling pleased, Antares let his dragon army loose, destroying everything in their path. So, if Antares can easily kill you with just his breath and has an entire army of dragons backing him up, which of the other monarchs can stand against him? Except Ashbourne, of course. Even if you have an army of giants, zombies and demons, they won't stand a chance against the Dragon King. And let's not even count the ice golems, cause they'll just instantly melt away. When Jin-woo finally showed up, he teleported Antares with him to a far-off island in Japan. The two started fighting there. Antares was tough to beat because he could turn into a dragon. At first, no matter how many times Jin-woo attacked, the Dragon King's scales were so thick that Jin-woo's attacks didn't even scratch Antares. This part literally shows that the Dragon King ain't just destructive, but he's also defensively strong. I mean, the guy's a tank. Tarnak must be jealous of this guy. Which means even if Baran had Thunder Breath, it'll only tickle Antares. If the Monarch of Frost uses his ice magic against this dragon, that magic will just be like a popsicle of ice cream that he can eat. And even Rakan can transform into a giant wolf, but there's no chance he can bite through Antares' dragon scales. In short, they'll just die fighting Antares. So the Dragon King stopped fighting for a moment and offered not to harm all the humans if Jin-woo helped him defeat the rulers. But of course Jin-woo rejected this offer. This made them start fighting again. It was a tough battle. But when Jin-woo got a chance to use his dad's special dagger to nearly split Antares in two, Antares was really surprised to see that Jin-woo had actually managed to hurt him. Then he noticed the armies of the rulers up in the sky and realized Jin-woo had been planning this all along. Jin-woo also revealed that Antares is the one who ordered Rakan and Baran to attack Ashbourne. After revealing that Antares was behind the betrayal, Jin-woo couldn't help but mock the Dragon King. His mockery taunted Antares, who then tried to attack Jin-woo one last time. However, the rulers jumped in and defeated him with their spears. Bro got fatality'd. Now with all of the monarchs totally defeated, Jin-woo had a special request. He asked the rulers to use the Cup of Reincarnation again to rewind time, aiming to bring back the many lives lost in the battle. The rulers agreed and turned back time. Boom! Antares and all the other monarchs were alive again. But there was a catch. The monarchs would still remember everything that had happened before, which somehow wasn't really a big deal for our boy Jin-woo. He hunted down the monarchs and beat them all without much trouble. Fast forward 27 years, Antares was the only monarch left. That's when Jin-woo showed up in his palace, ready to defeat him and finish everything. The Dragon King was really happy to get another chance to fight Jin-woo. In the end, Jin-woo won the battle. The only injury he got was a bad burn on his left hand. Next, the original Shadow Monarch and the King of the Dead, Ashbourne. When the rulers captured Legia, the Giant King, the balance of powers collapsed. Ashbourne seized that chance to reach out to the other monarchs. In order to face off against the rulers, the monarchs had no choice but to team up with Ashbourne. After that, Ashbourne fought alongside the monarchs and became the Monarch of Shadows. Ashbourne was so powerful, the rulers and even the monarchs feared him. That's why Antares ordered the Demon King and the King of Beasts to betray Ashbourne. But these mofos didn't stand a chance against the Shadow Monarch. Since Jin-woo ended up killing all the monarchs, and since he and Ashbourne are the same, then it's obvious that Ashbourne is way stronger than all of the 8 monarchs combined. Despite having massive armies or crazy superpowers, Jin-woo is proof of how strong Ashbourne really was. I mean, Jin-woo didn't even lift a finger against Tarnak. Jogament died without doing anything, while Rakan, Kureisha, and the Frost Monarch, with their combined powers, were useless against Jin-woo. So Rakan ran away, and Baran ended up dying. After that, the rulers appeared, knelt before Ashbourne, and asked for forgiveness. Bruh, the rulers could have easily killed Ashbourne at that time, but instead they all kneeled and said sorry to him. Why? I think this is because they didn't just fear him, but they also respected Ashbourne. Of course, Ashbourne was furious and didn't want to forgive anybody. He even told them to end the war by killing him right there, but the rulers just kept asking for forgiveness. Ashbourne was so confused and didn't know what to do. He then decided to hide in order to plan his revenge against the monarchs who betrayed him. So Ashbourne left the big battle to strengthen his shadow army again. While he was hiding, the monarchs lost a huge amount of fighting power and were defeated by the rulers. See, that's how powerful Ashbourne was. If the monarchs hadn't betrayed him, they couldn't have been defeated. By the way guys, the rulers and monarchs have spiritual bodies and don't have their own physical bodies. To visit the human world, they need to use human bodies. They pick people and use those bodies. But they let people stay in control of themselves. Rulers can't actually use their full power this way, unlike the monarchs who totally take over the human's body and use it for themselves. So both Ashbourne and Antares possess enormous power. To cross into the world or Earth, they need a human vessel that can handle such power. This is why Ashbourne and Antares can't find a suitable vessel because they're just too overpowered. This is where the architect comes in. He offered to find Ashbourne a suitable human, and in exchange he asked for immortality. Ashbourne agreed with the architect and spent years searching for a suitable vessel. The architect actually had a tough time because no living being could become a vessel for death. That's when Ashbourne found Jin-woo. Jin-woo was chosen because he had stepped beyond the boundaries of the system that the architect had created. A human who didn't follow its rules and did things differently. Plus, Jin-woo was always weak and constantly facing death, yet he always managed to escape with his life. Even though the architect disagreed, Ashbourne still chose Jin-woo. Then, Jin-woo and Ashbourne became one. That's why Ashbourne said to Jin-woo, "I am the record of your bitter struggle. I am the evidence of your resistance. I am the reward of your pain. I am death. I am eternal rest. And I am also terror. I am you." So after fully absorbing Ashbourne's powers, Jin-woo actually surpassed Ashbourne. With that kind of power, do you think Jin-woo could take on the strongest isekai characters?